Lyden funker. Okay. Hello! Okay. So, I wanted to share with you, and therefore also you,
By extension.
by extension,
Also you.
some of the thoughts about the nature of reality. So, I want to point out at first that this is from a philosophical perspective more than a scientific one.
It's not a lecture on how reality is made from quantum physics and up. It's more subjective.
Yeah. Indeed. Thank you. He's got it. Okay.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. And of course, please shoot in with whatever thoughts you might have or something I just want to share. This is not a debate. It's just two people talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also take a break if you want some insight or opinions upon what you say. Yeah.
Okay. So actually I have 3 arguments here, but now I only remember 2 of them. So we'll take it from there, and maybe we'll create another video at another time. Who knows? Maybe not, probably, but that's for the future.
Definitely, probably.
Yeah. Okay, so number 1. Reality is energy. Reality as we know it, as where we are existing in our universe, it's like energy and non-energy, and there are many different forms of energy, and a lot of these things I've just gathered some information, but I don't know too much about the different things, so I won't go into that, but I'll mention some variations.
Can I interject? No, actually you're just about to explain what I'm wondering about.
Okay.
I think. Because I was wondering about if there's different forms of energy, or if there's different frequencies of energy, or if you're talking about potential energy and baseline energy, but I think you're about to go into it, so I won't interject any more.
Here you mentioned some other words that are nice to have in the conversation while we are talking about this, and I think you are correct in what you are saying as well. I was about to mention some of that, I think. So yes, so different forms of energy, for example, dark energy, dark matter. You mentioned something that I haven't heard about, baseline energy. Is that the whatever?
I just made up a term to describe what I was thinking about.
Nice.
This is pure source energy, kind of. Yeah.
Love it. As far as I have understood, and I haven't understood this yet, I wonder if dark energy is one of those forms you now call as source energy, but I'm not sure about that, so I won't talk about that. What I can do, of course, is read about it, and it sounds exciting. Yes. And you mentioned frequencies. I want to write that down. frequencies. That makes me think about right now when I wrote it down. Made me think about the song from the band that you liked before, and now I put the song on my playlist with. Is it called Different Frequencies? Na, 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 da, 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 da. Game Grumps? No. The dude? No.
No.
What is he called? The one with the curly hair? He makes like 80s music or nothing.
Oh, I know what band you were talking about.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's not very like it's more like a fun band anyway. I think it's like it's not like proper music. I think it's kind of like comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the YouTube
That's
channel.
my impression as well.
The YouTube channel.
They do it for fun, more like.
I think so. I don't know. I haven't watched them in a long time.
Yeah.
I think this is like 5 years ago we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
But it's a fun band because they make like I like the music. I think they make cool music, and but it's also more like a little bit just for fun, and they want to create, and he likes singing, and
I think so too.
yeah.
Yeah, but I was thinking about like when you started talking about frequencies, and I was thinking about like I was looking for like stiff little fingers or something. Like it was complete detraction from that. I was like, oh yeah. Not totally. Okay.
Frequencies makes me think about Sufjan Stevens as well.
Yeah. Let's just turn this into a band recommendation stream instead.
Yes, that's good.
That's a good idea.
Okay, so yes, so different kinds of energies. I think in my opinion, it's very easy to just take them all under one comb and extract it down to like one energy, but we won't go there now. That is not. I'm talking about things I don't want to talk about. So yeah. Because now I mentioned different energies, forms and functions and frequencies. Anyways, so yes, okay, so like energy and okay, because the thing is, and now we're getting into it, because the thing is, space as we know it consists of energy in the form of that it is built up by atoms and where it is built up and what it is built up of depends on the perspective we are taking, of course. And now as a human, and this is like basic knowledge now in humanity. Nej, Fido. Det går bra. Vær stille. Det går bra.
Se.
Flinkhet. Det går bra. Flinkhet. Flinkhet. Bra. Okay. So now I'm talking from the perspective of what is now known basically as human understanding, and and that is of course a weird thing to say because some humans don't have that knowledge, and some people have a lot more knowledge, and yes, but you guess you can understand what I'm trying to say. Good. Okay. So we know that there are atoms, and that these atoms have, first of all, they have a lot of space in between them, and second, they are built of smaller things called, protons, electrons, and neutrons. And as far as I understood it from my teacher in high school, the neutrons in the atom source, core,
Yeah.
I think the core, is made up again of protons and electrons, but that I don't know about. So, but the atoms are built up of these three things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the electron again, electrons I know have been interesting to scientists and science because of its different properties, or what one should say. Don't know too much about that either, except from that one of the things the electron is built up of is photons, which is, as far as I have understood, light.
Okay, yeah.
And electrons have a lot of energy in them, and they are negatively charged, as protons are positively charged. So yes, and they are all moving very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, so okay. So
It's funny we had about this at university, but my head is too thick. Don't go in there.
told.
Yeah.
So, and I'm talking about, yes, I'm talking more than I imagined I would talk. So now people are probably sick of me already, and they're just like,
so.
I know this.
Well, some people are probably like, I know this, but they
And
also
some
see
people
that,
are, what the hell is she talking about?
Yeah, but they all, yeah. I agree. I think it's nice to hear you talk, so I think you should continue.
Okay. So, between all of these different, this is where perspectives come into the picture as well. Like, where are we looking from? Are we looking at the atom? Are we looking at the electron? Are we looking at this or that or this or that? Am I looking at you?
Mm-hmm.
You are much bigger than an atom. Am I looking at galaxies? Everywhere in space,
Yeah.
as we know it, there is space. In space, there is a lot of space. There is space between you and me. There is space between atoms.
Yeah.
There is space between galaxies. There is space between stars, planets, whatever.
Yeah. And this I remember from whatever, when we learned about it. Like, the atom model that we have is completely incorrect. In actuality, it's like, there's so much more space.
Yeah.
Like, there's just tiny points, and in between them is like
There's so much space.
massive amount relatively to the size of the
So that
core and the proton, like, there's much more space.
and I remember that, well, first of all, I found that interesting because when I look at my hand, it looks solid. Sorry, excuse me. Remind me later. Thank you. When I look at my hand, it looks solid.
Yeah.
But this is obviously not the case. This is mostly space.
Yeah.
And to my eyes, my brain interprets it as a solid thing, and when I use it, either against my own hands or at the table, which also has a lot of space in it, it feels solid. Funny. Weird.
Because your hand is not what you see, is what the Buddhists call a sign.
What is called?
What the Buddhists call a sign. It's not actually what's there, but it's sort of like a symbolic interpretation of what's actually there.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
A sign?
A sign.
S-I-G-N?
I think so.
Cool.
I got this from the audiobook from Nathan.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yes. Now we have touched in on some of the things I also want to talk about, but I'll pause and retract once more, because another thing I remember from elementary school, primary school, elementary, no. A teacher, she was like, she was into science, you know, and and she was really excited more of the classes I remember, but also in the class where she told us that, and it kind of freaked us students out a little bit, when she talked about how we are not really ever touching each other.
Oh, yeah.
Like when we do like this, I mean, there is so much space between everything, so we are never touching.
Yeah.
It's funny.
We're never touching anything.
No. It's all an illusion.
Okay, we have gonna levitate.
I see it with my inner eye. I'm just kidding. And not at the same time. It's funny. But yeah, that was a funny joke you got there. Okay. So, yes. Okay, back to the electrons and photons and shit like that. Because it's interesting. Because yes, so all the atoms, I mean, and then we have the periodic table system where we have all the different, like, okay, if you got this many protons and neutrons in the core of the atom, it is called this, what is it called? Like hydrogen and helium and oxygen and like the basic elements.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, and the well, yeah, it's like because of like the number of things like protons, electrons, and all of that, and the combination of them, and how they like attract each other and work together and like become not just an atom, but what is it called when there are more atoms like going together? I can't remember, but anyways, this seems to determine how it functions, basically.
Yeah.
Like
The chemical effect.
yes.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so what kind of like part it plays in the big picture reality, like, and also how our brain interprets it, and that is what I want to talk about now, because nothing that I see is what I see in reality.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as we know, via science, this is just like a bunch of atoms floating around, you know, and I can look at it from wherever, you know. So, but if I go down and in, it's a bunch of atoms floating around. Or not floating maybe, but whatever. Hanging around. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, so and photons, as far as I have understood, yes, are light. So this is what travels, like the light. Light travels, yes, but light also, like, it comes to my eyes. My eyes are empty. They are a sense organ. No, it's empty inside. It's a lens, and that it just goes through the lens, just like a camera. It's not like it's. Anyway.
Well, your irises are like a hole, and the light goes in and hits it, and goes through the hole and goes in and hits the sensory part is at an angle, and that gives you like the raw base data.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everything on top of that is interpretation and
Yes.
yeah, like for them, what's that?
Prejudice.
Yeah,
And
prejudice.
like antagelser.
Yeah. So, wait, is it okay if I?
Yeah.
Because what I think you're getting into is the distance between what we actually sense and how our brain interprets it to sort of be able to move around the world in a practical sense.
Yeah.
And there's like a huge distinction between what is necessarily actually there and how we perceive it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That last part was my point. The practicality behind it is a very interesting point that I didn't think about in this sammanhang. In this the landscape.
Yeah, doesn't matter. It's obvious.
Yeah. But a very interesting point. What's practical? and that is of course yeah, that's a very fascinating subject, because there is so much that we throw away of information, because there is information everywhere.
Yeah.
We can choose to look at atoms as information.
Yeah.
And wavelengths, we can choose to look at that as it's just information. And how our brain then interprets this, because there is so much information that in a practical reality we have to our brain does it for us. It sorts out what it thinks based on the way it is used to being used. It throws away what it redeems of non-importance for the situation, so that we can continue living our life in a practical way, or in this way, or in that way. What makes sense to how we are using the brain, and yes.
Yeah, for our basically for our survival. But the most basic example of this is what's even closer than right in front of our nose. It's our nose. Our brain removes our nose. We can always see our nose, but our brain just removes it because it's impractical for us to always see our nose. Yeah. It's
That's
a very direct example of how our brain shapes our understanding of what we actually see. It's not only what's in front of us, but it's what we what is practical for us, or what our brain has been taught is practical for us to see, to ensure our
functioning and reality. Basically.
Survival and
survival.
Propagation of our species and all that.
Yeah.
Not to go into evolutionary psychology, a very sketchy field, but what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
The driving forces of our human nature. No. Okay. Yes, and the blind spot in the eyesight also I thought about when you said the nose.
What do you mean, the fact where we invent?
Yeah. Isn't it around here somewhere? I'm not sure.
I think it's here where we can't actually see anything. There's a blind spot where we can't actually see anything.
But that's behind you, so you can't see it there.
No, but that's the point. You can't see it, but there's a point where we just make up where the brain just makes up what's probably there, even though we can't actually see it.
Okay, I thought it was okay. But we have to check that out.
I don't know exactly where it is. I guess you could kind of.
Thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. Anyway.
Sorry, let's circle back.
So the point about that point was that yes, my image of reality is interpreted by my brain.
Yeah.
I create my own image, sort of, based on, as we talked about, what is practical for me, what is what I need to survive. These are basic needs of a human, and we are driven in a lot of ways. We are driven by that unconsciously, like what do I need to survive. Anyways, okay, image of reality. I'm tired to put it by my brain. Yeah, so even like when we look at different things, we see different things, and our brain also associate, of course, based on previous notifications and experiences. So, for example, if you make, and this is taking it a whole other way again, but if you say a sentence, then two people will react completely different to that sentence based on what their brains have experienced and been through and interpreted before, and how they are used to thinking. Brain stuff we've got to talk more about because it's very interesting, but not necessarily right now. I'm thinking about like how we can, because the brain is what is it called, some plastic.
Yeah.
Placid? No, I don't
No.
know.
Plastic. I think it's plastic. Well, anyway, that it changes.
It changes. It's not like we thought before, where it's like, oh, you are born with this many brain cells, and the brain keeps evolving until you're like 25, and then it's finished evolving.
Yeah.
No, that was turns out that was incorrect. It keeps moving.
Keeps changing.
Keeps changing.
Yeah.
And that is, of course, good news for everyone here over 25. So
it's very good news.
Very good news.
Yeah.
And how it creates it can create how we can we can change our brain basically. And it turns out it's both like how it works for us, but also you can even see it physically. Yes. I heard, I don't know if this is true, but I heard, for example, when that they opened Einstein's brain, and it had a lot more of these connections between the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain. But I don't know about it. It's just something I heard. I don't know if it's true.
I've heard a lot of things about Einstein's brain. I don't know what's true or not.
Yeah.
But I've heard that it was smaller, but it had like thicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know what's true because Einstein is like the number one. Like I don't know, like I think he's the person with the most.
Sorry.
No, that's only good. The person with the most misattributed quotes or something. Like when you read an Einstein quote, it's probably not an Einstein quote.
Yeah.
It's just people love writing, like having a quote and then writing Einstein underneath.
Yeah. This is very smartly said because Einstein said it.
Yeah, Einstein said it.
Okay, I guess we've covered a lot of the things that I wanted. That was like the one of the arguments, and I don't even know what I'm arguing for.
But can I ask you about that? Actually?
Yeah.
Because I think what you've done thus far, for me at least, is given a lot of good points of good
At
points
the
of like good points to draw arguments from.
Yeah.
But do you want to circle back and explain what conclusions you've made from these arguments?
Oh yeah, maybe we'll talk about the next arguments first, and then we'll see if they're because these are like 2 out of 3 arguments that I have about something, and I can talk about that, but right now, then I have to like circle back, as you said, to that, because now I don't even remember the point of it. But I know that if I just take a couple of seconds, it will all come back to me. But maybe we'll
go to the next argument and then circle back in the end, and then that sounds good.
Okay. I don't know if that we can see from this next argument, or next point, number 2, and of course number 3 is missing. So this will probably be.
I love that. It's very mysterious.
Very mystical and mysterious. It probably won't, and I'm not saying that these 3 arguments are like that they have any whatever basis in the reality, but there are just 3 arguments, and now there are only 2, so we'll come back to the 3rd one at a later time.
Well, they clearly have basis. It's just what conclusions you draw from it, I guess. Is, thus far, at least, up to whoever.
Therefore, we are. we can draw many conclusions.
Yeah.
Okay, so the second one.
I can say my conclusion thus far is, or what I've gotten out of it thus far, is basic pointings to the fact that how we perceive what we perceive is not equal to what we perceive.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I mean?
Yeah, I think so.
So there's like a base reality that we perceive, but how we then perceive that in our observation. Like we have the observator that observes all of these processed sense inputs,
information,
right? Yeah.
Inputs.
And after they've gone through the process, those do not equal 1-to-1 anymore what was actually seen. Yeah, like they say, like babies or people who get their sight back after like an operation that have been blind, for a good while it's just light. It's just light you can't really make sense of.
Yeah. And
it brings me to other thoughts, like how we perceive, like, okay, this is a chair, for example. But the reason why it's practical for us to say, oh, this is a chair, is because then we know, oh, we can sit in this chair, right? But that's like I don't know if you read about like Sartre when he had like a mescaline trip.
I think you barely told me about it.
Yeah, he wrote about like afterwards, like how how those lines disappeared for him, right? And those lines are both directly practical for us in some sense, but they can also be very harmful. Something we can go into later, because that's like a huge subject. How those preconceived ideas can be very harmful as well. But yeah, that's what I got out from it.
Exciting, right? Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to take out of it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we can circle back and be interesting to see what you thought about from the start. I think.
Okay.
I think so.
Cool. That's good. That's nice.
On to the next step.
I just want to circle back again a little bit to the last one, because I just want to. We talked a lot about eyesight now. I just want to include, and we talked a little bit about touch. I just want to include hearing also, because I love hearing and musica and everything. Yeah, and I was thinking about in relation to eyesight as well, because it's I'm guessing that many other people also have had this experience. I think you have had it at least. I think we talked about it before. But like, let's say we're standing watching nature, or maybe we're just walking and talking outside, and then suddenly like I look up and like I see this beautiful nature-ic picture, and I'm just like, whoa, and I'm like saying to you or whoever is there, like, well, whoa, look, it's so beautiful, and then the other person is like, oh yeah, it's really beautiful, and it has been obvious to me sometimes in my life that, but okay, we are not seeing the same thing.
Yeah.
My brain is reacting and interpreting this image that it's getting through the eyes, interpreting it in a different way than your brain is, for many reasons, of course, and so. But it's interesting, yeah. And I just yeah. Jeg bare fortsetter å prate. And yes, it's interesting also with sounds, because it's the same there. Like our ears are empty, and our brain interpreting the vibrations, because there we get into frequencies and vibration too. Of course, we can do that with light as well, but for me this is easier explained through noise and sound, because it's so like obvious in everything, just that we have different voice. It's like our the thing in here that creates the voice, just different vibrations, and it makes a frequency and the sound and vibration, and there is like wavelengths, and because of all this we get different type of sounds, and it's just like have you heard what I said a little bit?
Like 85%.
Okay, that's enough. Yes, on to how different vibrations and frequencies and wavelengths are creating different inputs for us, and this is like we know this with light as well. The different colors have different frequencies and wavelengths and vibrations. And same with sound. So therefore, your voice and my voice are different, because we have our own vibrational system inside, which like the voice creating thing, which creates a certain vibrations. If I
we send our like throats, and all of these are different sizes and thicknesses and strengths, and all of that together
therefore creates a unique vibration, which then again are interpreted, travels through the space and hitting our empty ear, goes inside to our brain.
Well, our eardrum first.
Yes. Yeah, that's probably and yeah, creating sounds and different sounds, and yes. Yeah. I just wanted to touch on that as well.
I think we could also say, when we talk about sight, that's kind of what we say about sight here is in some way or other true for all of the senses.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's just more like an example, I guess.
Yeah.
You could say, because it's yeah.
It's the same with the sense organ, because this has a different atom structure and electrons and and vibration. It feels different to me than let's say you,
Yeah.
because of the difference in energy. Because if we take it down to the atoms, which are built of by protons and electrons, which are like positively charged and negatively charged energy, sort of.
Yeah.
In different ways. Well, yeah. So it's like different structures and different feel. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they connect together in a way that makes the sort of like a different landscape, like valleys and or in the case of the skin, it's oily, something you're gonna feel like all of these connections together, but that's hardly the point. The point is whatever actually happens there is secondary to what we actually feel, right?
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so the second one is, it talks about dimensions a little tiny bit. It talks about some other things too, which I will get into. But basically, we are here, right? Our reality, where we function in the daily life, is, as far as I have understood, known as the third reality dimension. Sorry, the third dimension.
Yeah.
The 3D. 3D, as far as I have understood, consists basically of time and space.
Yeah.
And these two goes together also, as we have understood it from, like, let's take Big Bang, like where time as we know it began to exist, and moves out time going forward as it was at the same time as space is like extracting, or what it's called, expanding. Yes.
Yeah, I don't fully understand how this works, but anyway, it's like height, width, and breadth, and when something moves, somehow that something moves creates time. So the speed it moves is also how, like, it that distorts the time, sort of. I don't, like I said, I don't completely understand.
It
this.
also has to also with here I lack a lot of knowledge as well, but I have like, because of the relativity theory, the theory of relativity and blah blah blah. Yeah, that kind of lost it a little bit because I don't have enough knowledge about it.
But I don't think this is what we're talking about anyway, like the scientific structures of, like, how the dimensional spaces function. Is it?
No, that's not the point.
No, that's not the point.
It's just interesting. Yes.
I don't need to know exactly the anatomy of an ant to know that an ant moves and eats sugar, or gets sugar and brings it back, or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
You get my point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't need to know the cellular structure to understand other things about how it functions.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just gives a lot of brain food.
Yeah.
Food for thought. It's fun to think about.
Yeah.
But okay. So then again, as far as I have understood it, outside of the 3D reality, time and space does not work in the same way anymore.
No.
As far as like we are concerned here.
Yeah.
And just our brain, even, I would say, does not only operate in the 3D world because we can think, we can imagine the future, but more important for this argument is that we can look back in our past.
Yeah.
So time does not work in the same way in our brain as in time-space reality.
Yeah. And can I mention something here?
Yeah.
Because I think a very like a very typical argument someone would say against what you're about to say now is, oh well, but we can only estimate, right? We can only estimate how something was, how something is going to be, and all of these things. But my counterpoint to that is, like we were just talking about earlier, we can only estimate how things are as well.
It's
so
true.
We're always moving in a certain there's always like a certain wiggle room of uncertainty as to what is actually happening.
It is just our interpretation.
It's just our interpretation, and we can say that about the past, future, and imagination as well. Even though our
now.
inner worlds we can see clearly in the now, but the outer world we cannot see clearly in the now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of people like to talk about the different types of dimensions. I don't really know too much about it. Like I don't know what science says. I have heard some like in the so-called like spiritual environment.
Are you talking about like the New Age spiritual environment, or?
Yeah. Because in the more traditional views on these things, I haven't heard too much talk about dimensions exactly, just like other words for it. But that's not completely true either. So we'll scratch all of that. Yeah. So and it's of course very interesting to see what different types of sciences says about this. And how many like dimensions they have discovered, and shit like that.
Yeah, I think they estimated like 11 or something, 11 dimensions up. I don't know about that. Yeah.
And of course, what is interesting about science then also is like things only appear as we are looking for them. So if like or not looking and they just appear.
Yeah.
But it's just what is like what has arisen, sort of, can be seen, sort of. Anyways. Okay, but let's go back to the third dimension. And let's go back to our universe. Because, as Newton said, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can just change form. That and this is like, as far as I have understood it, again, this is like inside of our universe. No, and the word universe. Okay, so now I'm back to just philosophizing and thinking and sharing thoughts, which I am doing all the time, anyways. But you know,
Yeah, that's the point. It's definitely not a science lecture.
no, it's not.
No.
So yes, universe, and just the word in itself. I find it. I love to think about how yeah, no, just forget that. But the universe, the word in itself is very interesting, I think, because it's universe, one verse, like one song. This is like it's one thing.
Yeah.
And as we, if we take this law of Newton into this, one verse, this one thing, this one universe. Okay, so energy it comes with a certain amount of energy, and I think that is maybe up for discussion because of all the dark matter and dark energy, the things that have come into the consciousness of some people now, through science and blah blah blah. But let's stick to this more simple thing, because then I, as a note here, for point number 2, I wrote a cloud never dies, as Thich Nhat Hanh talks about, because it's more of like the Buddhist way to interpret this law of Newton, as is one. This is my interpretation, one of my interpretations of it.
I like this thus far.
Cool.
I got a little bit lost when we were going to the scientific realm of this, but now I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because then, okay, so there is a certain amount of things that creates a cloud, and then the cloud, when it restructures sort of, and it turns into rain, for example, and damp, steam. And these different, it changes form, basically.
It transmutes.
Yes. And yes, now I would love to have a more of a conversation, that we can go back and forth as much as we want.
Love it.
Because it's because the other point, and maybe I'll lose some of you again now, but I'll explain a little more also, because the second note I wrote here, it was a cloud never dies, equals everything is connected.
Yeah.
Because and also I think we can take the Newton thing into this, because it just changes form.
Yeah.
And nothing ceases to exist.
Yeah.
Therefore, it just changes form.
Okay.
And he also uses a flower as an example, because a flower it has its roots, takes things, nutrition and different things.
Sunlight, water.
Yes, and from the earth.
Minerals.
Yes. And stuff, and
I'm listening.
And as you said, sunlight, rain from the cloud. So the cloud then suddenly is had turned into water, which is turned into which the flower takes and turns into something else, and yes. And then of course we can begin to like look inward / philosophize about how this would relate to different dimensions of reality.
Yeah.
And look at like how our universe, the one thing, is connected or not connected, or coexists with different types of things, but that is just something we can look at if we want to. Yes, I think that was basically the points, at least that I can think of now, that I wanted to talk about. And therefore, I would just like to say, in relation to what you asked me before, what am I arguing for here? It's basically the same as your interpretation of it. That reality is not really reality. It is a subjective interpretation of reality, and everyone has its own reality, its own perspective. It depends on where we are looking at it, what we are looking at, where we are looking from, and also in the 3D, the history of things, like what is my experience, what have I been through, how is my brain used to thinking and interpreting things, and because of all of these different aspects, it creates an image of reality. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that was like, at least it's a great point. I think.
At least it's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very important.
It's very important as well for how we interact with the world and ourselves and everything around us, and
it allows also for empathy, even towards actions or thoughts we don't understand, right? Because like it allows us to, because I think I've talked about this a little bit before, but I think like the idea that we often have, that empathy is the ability to put yourself in others' shoes, is a flawed analogy. Because it's like, if I put myself, and I'm describing self as a personality here, even though I don't think that is correct, into someone else's shoes, and I say, okay, this person has done this thing that I disagree with, and then I put myself with my experiences into this person's shoes, and it's like, okay, I don't have the necessary ingredients to understand why they did it. But the reality of the situation is that what is obviously true is there's always a reason someone does what they do. It's always going to be completely understandable, and when I say understandable, I don't mean justified. I just mean understandable. There are always forces that push us to act or think in a certain sense. And when we open up to understand that people's understanding or view of reality is going to be different, and contingent on the experiences that have been practical for them, then we could expand our empathy to say, hey man, like, I don't think this is justified, but I understand that there's a reason why you think like this, why you act like this. I think that's a much healthier first step to actually, if it's something really bad, to re-educate. If it's something less obviously, and like this is a huge spectrum what I'm about to say now, which is like less obviously horrible, right? To see if am I missing something from the equation here? Are you missing something? We're probably both missing something, and allow ourselves to be comfortable in that sense of uncertainty, to kind of be able to stretch and expand ourself and our field, our horizon of empathy and understanding, to encompass not only the things that we can see ourselves, the things we can understand from our perspective, but from all perspective, because we don't need to have experienced other people's perspective to understand that they have a reason and like a reason for having that perspective. Maybe their blue isn't my blue, kind of metaphorically, you know. Maybe their understanding of what is really bad is not my understanding of what is really bad, and it allows us like realize their search for freedom, sort of, and why they do what they do, without actually needing to know why they do what they do. That's just an addendum.
Love those thoughts. Love that.
That's kind of like the most practical point I can put what we've been talking about in my experience.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and also just as you said, the understanding that there's more to this reality than what we see.
Exciting. What you said, all the things that you went through now, it gave me some associations and stuff that and things to talk about that I found, and I think a lot of other people, maybe not from like the way I am talking about it, but like and you, but that I find very interesting. Talking point from like and
Perspective.
yeah, perspectives, and different things. Well, yeah. No, a lot of what you said gave me associations to different things that would be fun to talk about.
Yeah.
But I am wondering if maybe we should take that at another time.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think actually, what, just to summarize my experience.
Yeah.
I think what you've one brought into light for at least for me, and second taught me, because there's been a lot of things that I haven't seen from exactly the point of view that you brought forth, have been very expansive for me. and I think this is a very good, actually a very good starting point, and to go on from forwards.
Cool.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool.
You
It gave,
know how to do this.
gave me a lot of cool things to think about as well.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to the next time. Thank you.
Thank you.